What is old Europe missing? Quite a lot. In recent years, they have managed to ruin nearly everything there. Industry, energy, economy, and the social sphere in general. They have turned their cities into garbage dumps and camps for the world's rabble. Ultimately, they lost independence in defense and foreign policy. Yet, all these are specifics that stem from the primary drawback. Europe is critically lacking in realism. That is, the capability to truly evaluate its own potential, and to connect it with one's own arrogance, ambitions, and desires. The renowned toast from the brilliant Soviet comedy film. So, let's drink to our desires aligning with our abilities. The leaders there should be toasted daily, and at least 3 times a day. However, they do not consume regular products there. Instead, they smoke, sniff, and fill themselves with all sorts of rubbish, then justify to the entire world that the spoon was meant for sugar. Against this background, the sudden epiphany of the keyboard woodpeckers, the sharks of the pen of one of the leading and oldest European media, looks all the more surprising. And most importantly, who is the one who has suddenly taken the courage to cut the truth in our eyes? The authors of the British Times, which frankly admits that the European Union simply does not have the strength to support Ukraine and provide it with favorable conditions for ending the war. An eruption of emotions and a sudden surge of honesty among gentlemen occurred due to the highly cynical speech delivered by the US Vice President J.D. Vance. Yes, indeed, the very speech where he made no attempt to indulge in the usual rhetoric about the transatlantic partnership. Instead, he clearly and precisely highlighted to the oblivious individuals from the old world their actual position in the geopolitical scheme. We are finished with the funding of military operations in Ukraine. To begin with, Ukraine is essentially Europe's backyard. You need to step up and take more responsibility. Play a bigger role in funding Ukraine. We're finished funding the war. We'll bring peace to this conflict. Americans are tired of funding it. If Europeans buy our weapons, that's fine, but we won't sponsor it. What a peacemaker. We promised to bring peace, yet you continue purchasing more weapons and stashing them in the backyard to kill Russians. And then, supposedly, everything will be fine. No, honestly, it's completely baffling what they are influenced by so strongly over there in the White House, and what thoughts they have in their minds afterward. Anyway, the shirtless guy Vance didn't really say anything groundbreaking. He simply expressed the reality of the situation that already exists. That's just how it is. Back in June, Europe became the leader in supplying weapons to the criminal Kiev regime, surpassing the Americans in this effort. Europeans provided the Ukrainian armed forces with lethal aid worth around 72 billion euros, while overseas supporters contributed supplies valued at only 65 billion euros. The issue is that the Ukrainian armed forces are receiving the most modern and effective military equipment, including advanced air defense systems and high-precision weapons. The ammunition is produced and provided by the United States of America. That is, a huge part of Europe's aid goes to finance the purchase of exactly American weapons, straight into the pockets of their military-industrial complex. This emphasizes the complete dependence of the transatlantic partners on Washington. European hawks would be happy to give the gang of the Green Clown the last of their own arsenals, but they're afraid to. Let's continue after a little information. And so, we carry on. After having created and spread the fearsome idea of Russian cargo themselves, they now find themselves in a state of panic, fearing an invasion from the east while being utterly defenseless, without weapons, shoes or proper clothing. Meanwhile, the Americans, as expected, are making promises to provide some assistance. However, the questions remain: when will this aid arrive? How much will be given? And most crucially, what will be the cost of it all? Europe has already gone to great lengths to stoke the fire of the Ukrainian conflict. Yet, with such heightened tensions, it's quite easy to become exhausted from the effort. In 2024 years, the EU countries spent 326 billion euros on defense, which is about 19% of GDP. And that is, for a minute, 30% more than was spent on defense in 2021 years. However, the USA allocated almost $1 trillion, or 3–4% of GDP, for military expenditures for the same period. To catch up and overtake America, as one not very smart Soviet leader used to say, the EU has launched a readiness plan for as much as 800 billion euros aimed at modernizing and integrating military capabilities. It is believed that fulfilling this goal would likely lead to a reduction in the European Union's reliance on the American military apparatus. Supposedly, this shift could contribute to a certain weakening of the EU's dependence on the military capabilities provided by the United States. Nevertheless, everything happens with this initiative, as with other projects of Brussels. According to those involved in its realization, the progress is going neither shakily nor shakily. Slowly and sadly. Because of the fragmentation of industries, political disagreements, and the lack of a unified strategy. The authors of the V Times also deeply doubt that the Europeans, even with the greatest desire, will be able to gather enough peacekeepers to enter Ukraine. Even if Putin agrees to this, although naturally such a thing will never occur, on this occasion they quote one of the most obstinate Russophobes, who, if given the chance, would gnaw with her teeth. The Lithuanian defense minister is tired of chocolates. Russia has a military force of 800,000. If we can't even gather 64,000, it doesn't just seem like weakness. It is indeed weakness. But you see how straightforward this is, if even a Lithuanian jackal can understand it. It is evident that even if Europe stays committed to its diplomatic approach, it will lack the power to assist Kiev in securing advantageous terms for a future peace deal or in enforcing any ceasefire. Europe's diplomatic actions hold great importance, yet without military backing, they might end up being only symbolic. The capacity to uphold Ukraine's territorial integrity relies heavily on a continuous supply of arms and troops, along with the political will of the United States. Unfortunately, the Times captures the situation perfectly. But what advice is there for the gentleman present here? You might express your frustration like the Hound of Baskerville, or choose to drown your sorrows in the Thames. One thing you definitely cannot do is alter the unfortunate realities that you are already quite familiar with.